Have you ever felt like you've already played everything that was truly worth it? Well, the truth is, there are still plenty of incredible games hidden out there. Games you may have never even heard of, yet they deliver amazing and memorable experiences. Today, I'm going to show you exactly that. Incredible games you most likely haven't played yet. Not because they're bad, quite the opposite, but because they simply flew under the radar. So get ready, turn on your console, because at least one of these games might go straight onto your list. Call of Juarez Gunslinger. When we talk about the Western genre, everyone immediately thinks of Red Dead, but Call of Juarez Gunslinger is a masterpiece of stylized action that many people completely missed. This game humbles modern shooters through its unreliable narrator mechanic. You play as Silas Threaves, an old bounty hunter telling his life story in a saloon, and as he tells the tale, the world literally changes around you in real time. If he forgets a detail or exaggerates a fight, the environment shifts, enemies reappear, or new paths open up before your eyes. Technically, the cel-shaded art style is gorgeous and has aged like fine wine, looking just as vibrant in 2026 as it did at launch. The gunplay is fast, arcadey, and incredibly satisfying, featuring a concentration mode that makes you feel like the fastest draw in the West. It's worth every penny because it doesn't try to be a 100-hour open-world slog. It's a focused, high-octane, and incredibly witty journey through the myths of the Wild West. If you want a game that respects your time while delivering a unique narrative twist, this is a must-play that was tragically overlooked.
Mirror's Edge. Even nearly 2 decades after its release, Mirror's Edge remains a technical marvel that humbles modern first-person games. While most developers use the first-person perspective for shooting, DICE used it to create the most visceral parkour simulation ever made. The technical achievement here is the kinetic presence. You see Faith's arms and legs, you feel the weight of her landing and the momentum of her sprint. The lighting, a high-contrast, clinical white city splashed with vibrant primary colors, is an aesthetic masterpiece that still looks next-gen today. It was years ahead of its time in how it used runner vision to guide the player through flow and movement rather than clunky minimaps. It's a game about momentum and the physical joy of traversal. Ignoring it was a mistake because few games since have dared to be this stylistically bold or mechanically pure. It's a short, intense, and breathtakingly beautiful experience that proves that sometimes the best way to move forward is to never stop running.
Inversion is the definition of a hidden gem that was way ahead of its time in terms of physics-based combat. In a market saturated with generic cover shooters, Inversion introduced the Grappler, which allows you to manipulate gravity at will. What humbles modern shooters here is the environmental interaction. You can create low gravity zones to lift enemies out of cover, or high gravity zones to crush obstacles and pin foes to the ground. There are even segments where the vector of gravity shifts, and you find yourself fighting on the sides of buildings or upside down. Technically, the Havoc physics engine was pushed to its limit here, creating chaotic, destructible arenas that feel dynamic and unpredictable. It flopped because it was released during the peak of the Gears of War era and was dismissed as a clone, but its gravity-shifting mechanics offer a level of tactical creativity that modern safe shooters simply don't have. It is a fun, inventive, and technically ambitious title that deserves a second life on your console.
Deus Ex Human Revolution is a masterpiece of cyber-noir that humbles the modern RPG landscape through its incredible systemic depth. While many games give you the illusion of choice, Deus Ex delivers a technical reality where every objective can be approached in 4 distinct ways: combat, stealth, hacking, or social persuasion. The level design is a masterclass in multi-path architecture. A simple vent or a hackable computer isn't just a detail, it's a doorway to a completely different gameplay experience. Technically, the gold and black art direction is iconic, creating a world that feels both futuristic and ancient. The augmentation system allows you to physically change how you interact with the world, from jumping over buildings to becoming invisible. It is worth playing today because it respects your intelligence. It doesn't hold your hand with quest markers, instead inviting you to inhabit the role of Adam Jensen and solve the mysteries of a corporate-run dystopia your own way. It is a smart, polished, and deeply atmospheric experience that remains the gold standard for immersive sims.
Murdered Sole Suspect. If you're tired of games that follow the same tired formulas, Murdered Sole Suspect is a mandatory experience that humbles many modern titles through its sheer narrative courage. What makes this game so far ahead of its time is its central concept. You begin the game by being murdered, and you spend the rest of the journey as a ghost trying to solve your own homicide. Technically, this allowed airtight games to create a fascinating level design where the physical barriers of the living world don't apply to you. You could walk through walls, possess NPCs to read their thoughts or influence their actions, and investigate crime scenes from a purely supernatural perspective. The game shines in its atmosphere of Salem, Massachusetts, blending real-world witch trial history with a dark noir detective thriller. It failed commercially because it didn't fit into the action shooter mold that dominated the era, but as a game of investigation and storytelling, it's a masterpiece of creativity. It's a polished, thought-provoking, and emotionally gripping title that proves the greatest mystery of all is the one we leave behind. Binary Domain is without a doubt one of the most underrated shooters of all time. Developed by the team behind the Yakuza series, this game humbles modern shooters through its incredible procedural damage and squad AI. The technical highlight here is how you dismantle the robot enemies. You don't just shoot them, you take them apart piece by piece. If you shoot their legs, they keep crawling. If you take out their weapon arm, they switch the gun to their other hand. If you blow off their head, they lose their friend or foe sensors and start attacking their own allies. Furthermore, the game introduced a consequence system with your squad, where your combat choices and dialogue directly affect your teammates' loyalty, changing the story's outcome and their effectiveness in battle. Set in a stunning, futuristic Tokyo, it tackles deep questions about what defines a human being. It's a game with extremely satisfying gunplay, destruction physics that still look impressive today, and a soul that many of today's generic blockbusters simply lack. The Darkness. Based on the Top Cow comics, The Darkness is a first-person shooter that delivers an emotional density that most modern games are afraid to touch. You step into the shoes of Jackie Estacado, a mob hitman who, on his 21st birthday, is possessed by an ancient demonic force. What makes it technically brilliant is the use of the creeping dark arms as a core gameplay mechanic. You can devour hearts, flip cars, and use tentacles to rip enemies apart, all while maintaining control of your firearms. Lighting is a fundamental pillar of the gameplay. You must destroy light sources to keep your powers active, creating a unique Shadow Hunter dynamic. But what truly elevates it to masterpiece status is the narrative. There's a famous scene of watching TV on the couch with the protagonist's girlfriend that lasts for several minutes, and it remains one of the most human and touching moments in gaming history. It's a visceral, dark game with a phenomenal voice performance by Mike Patton as the Darkness, offering a personal and vengeful journey you won't find anywhere else.
Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor was a technical revolution that, bizarrely, very few games have tried to replicate since. The reason it's an absolute must-play is the Nemesis system. This system humbles almost every other open-world game by creating procedural villains with memory, personality, and a dynamic social hierarchy. If a common orc kills you, he gets promoted, earns a name, gains scars from the battle, and will mock you during your next encounter. This creates an emergent narrative where the player develops personal rivalries with enemies that are unique to their specific playthrough. Technically, the fluidity of the combat, inspired by the Arkham series, combined with Celebrimbor's supernatural abilities, makes fighting off hordes of hundreds of orcs feel cinematic and addictive. The map of Mordor is dense and reactive, and the feeling of breaking Sauron's army from the inside out is unparalleled. It is a game that turned AI technology into a pillar of pure fun, making it a landmark of innovation that every fan of action RPGs and Tolkien's world needs to play.
Enslaved Odyssey to the West, before they gained worldwide fame for Hellblade, Ninja Theory created Enslaved Odyssey to the West, a cinematic masterpiece that humbles the industry through its emotional fidelity and character animation. Released in 2010, this game was decades ahead of its time in how it used motion capture to tell a story. With Andy Serkis, the legend behind Gollum, directing the performances, the chemistry between the protagonists, Monkey and Trip, feels more real than most modern big-budget titles. Technically, the game's post-apocalyptic art direction is stunning. Instead of the usual gray and brown ruins, it presents a world reclaimed by vibrant nature and lush greenery, a visual style that clearly influenced games like Horizon Zero Dawn. The partner AI is a technical highlight. The gameplay revolves around a forced bond where Trip provides technical support and tactical distractions, while Monkey handles the brute force. It is a game that prioritizes the human connection in a world of machines. If you missed this, you missed one of the most soulful, beautiful, and expertly acted journeys in gaming history, proving that even a linear game can have a heart of gold.
Sunset Overdrive. Before Insomniac Games gave us Spider-Man, they created Sunset Overdrive, a game that is a technical masterclass in fluid traversal and kinetic energy. This title humbles modern open-world games by proving that the floor is lava. While most games treat movement as a way to get from point A to point B, Sunset Overdrive makes movement the core of the combat. You are constantly grinding on rails, wall running, and bouncing off cars, all while firing a massive arsenal of creative, wacky weapons. Technically, the game was a pioneer in managing high-speed physics and vibrant particle effects without dropping a frame, creating a pop-punk apocalypse that is visually unparalleled. It dared to be colorful, funny, and self-aware at a time when the industry was obsessed with gritty realism. The style meter mechanic forces you to play with flair, rewarding you for staying off the ground and being as creative as possible. It is a 10 out of 10 fun factor experience that feels like a playable cartoon. If you haven't played it, you're missing out on the blueprint for modern superhero movement and one of the most refreshing, high-energy games ever made. Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning is the game that humbles the entire RPG genre through its revolutionary combat and class flexibility. Developed with the help of fantasy legend R.A. Salvatore and Spawn creator Todd McFarlane, this game was way ahead of its time because it brought action game physics to a massive 100-hour open-world RPG. While other RPGs of the era felt stiff and clunky, Amalur offered a combat system that was as fluid as God of War, featuring a destiny system that allowed you to change your class and abilities on the fly without ever being locked in. Technically, the world building and the vibrant high fantasy art style are staggering in their scale. The Reckoning mode, a slow-motion finisher system, remains one of the most satisfying mechanics in any RPG. It flopped because of the studio's tragic financial collapse, but the game itself is a masterpiece of content and mechanical polish. It is a massive, colorful, and endlessly customizable epic that proves you don't have to sacrifice deep RPG systems for top-tier action. The Evil Within, directed by the father of survival horror, Shinji Mikami, is a technical masterclass in environmental manipulation and psychological dread. This game humbles modern horror titles by refusing to rely on simple jump scares, instead using the STEM system to physically alter the world around the player in real time. Rooms stretch, hallways turn into bottomless pits, and the environment itself becomes an enemy. Technically, the game utilized a cinematic letterboxing and a heavy film grain aesthetic to create a suffocating, grindhouse horror atmosphere that was years ahead of its time. The combat is a brutal exercise in resource management, where every match and every bullet is a life or death decision. What makes it a must-play is the sheer variety of its horror. One chapter is a stealth-heavy nightmare, while the next is a chaotic, physics-based trap room. It is a polished, terrifying, and deeply creative return to the roots of survival horror that demands your full attention. If you think you've seen everything the horror genre has to offer, The Evil Within will prove you wrong by pulling the floor out from under your feet.
Spec Ops: The Line is arguably the most important old game that you still haven't played because it is a narrative trap that humbles the entire military shooter genre. On the surface, it looks like a generic third-person cover shooter set in a sand-buried Dubai, but that was a deliberate technical and artistic choice to lure players into a false sense of security. As the story progresses, the game physically and psychologically deconstructs the player. Technically, it was a pioneer in visual degradation. As Captain Martin Walker descends into madness, his physical appearance roars with scars and burns, and his voice lines shift from professional tactical commands to screams of pure rage and desperation. The sand physics were also a major innovation. You could shoot out windows to bury enemies alive in a tidal wave of sand, a mechanic that still feels fresh in 2026. It is a masterpiece of subversion that asks you, why do you enjoy digital violence? It is a haunting, uncomfortable, and deeply necessary experience that proves games can be a more powerful medium for social and psychological critique than cinema.
The Order 1886. When The Order 1886 launched in 2015, the world wasn't ready for a game that prioritized cinematic technical fidelity over hours of content, but playing it today, it humbles almost everything else on your shelf. Ready at Dawn pushed the hardware to its absolute limit, utilizing a filmic rendering style that included high-quality lens flares, motion blur, and a level of material detail that made brass, cloth, and skin look indistinguishable from reality. The technical work on the soft body physics, where objects deform realistically under pressure, was a decade ahead of its time. What makes it a must-play is the atmosphere of its Victorian steampunk London. The way the Tesla-inspired weapons react with the environment and the visceral, heavy feel of the gunplay create an immersion that is unparalleled. It was criticized for being short, but it is a perfect 5-hour movie that you can actually play. It is a breathtakingly gorgeous tragedy that showed us the future of graphics, and it remains one of the most polished and visually impressive games ever created.
Titanfall 2. To close out this list, we have Titanfall 2, a game that is widely considered the holy grail of first-person shooters. It is a technical masterclass in kinetic perfection and level innovation. While other shooters feel slow and heavy, Titanfall 2 offers a movement system, wall running, double jumping, and sliding that feels like it was calibrated by the gods. But the true genius lies in its campaign. Each level introduces a world-class mechanic that other games would build an entire franchise around, like the Effect and Cause mission, where you shift between two different time periods instantly without a single loading screen, and then discards it for something even better in the next chapter. The relationship between the pilot, Jack Cooper, and the Titan, BT-7274, provides more emotional weight than most $200 million military dramas. It remains a technical legend, proving that when you prioritize gameplay flow and creative joy over industry trends, you create a timeless masterpiece. If you still haven't played this, you are missing out on the most refined and imaginative shooter in history. The most dangerous mistake a gamer can make is thinking that a game's value is tied to its release date. As we've seen today, some of the most technically innovative, narratively brave, and mechanically perfect experiences are hidden in the past. These 15 old games aren't just entries on a list, they are reminders that visionary design is immortal. They were ahead of their time, and in many ways, the rest of the industry is still trying to catch up to them. So, I want to hear from you. Which of these hidden gems are you going to install first? And is there an old game that you think everyone is sleeping on? Let's get a discussion going in the comments. Let's keep these masterpieces alive.